Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It happened fast and with little explanation or resources. In 2022, the city of Whitewater began to observe an increase in migrants from Central America. Whitewater Police Chief Daniel Meyer saw an increase in various law enforcement activity relating to issues not normally associated with local residents. He noted in an email to a Walworth County official that, quote, within the last month or so, our department has had contact with an increasing number of Nicaraguan migrants who have recently moved to our area. I don't have much of an estimate of how many people have moved into the city at this point, but a number of the adults have found jobs at larger businesses in our area. We recently have had a number of criminal investigations involving some of these individuals, and we've also had children from some of these families within the school district who have been reported truant. All told, from 2022 through 2023, the city estimates at least 1,000 migrants from Central America quietly established themselves in the sleepy college town of 15,000, a population increase of roughly 7%. The city has struggled to deal with the increasing strain on law enforcement resources, housing overcapacity, and the challenges associated with educating children with no formal background in schooling and often lacking basic English skills. These increasing burdens culminated in the police chief authoring a letter to the White House on December 28, 2023, highlighting the strain that had been placed on existing resources and describing the challenge as, quote, a critical humanitarian issue. A nearly identical letter had been sent the previous week to DHS Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. These letters resulted in additional communications from Wisconsin's congressional delegation and the Wisconsin legislature, as well as a significant number of state and national media requests. While many media outlets moved on to the next story, the city of Whitewater has continued to struggle to meet the demands from the newcomers. In order to determine the full extent of the challenges, on March 14, 2024, IRG's Center for Investigative Oversight submitted a series of public records requests to the police chief, who fully complied with the request and provided over 400 responsive records. IRG's review of the records provided by the city uncovered numerous revelations, which were detailed in a June report that is being provided to the committee. The 8 key takeaways include the following. First, while numerous public officials have attempted to highlight the challenges, the nation's broken immigration system and open borders continue to place an unmanageable burden on local units of government. Nationally touted funding programs are either unavailable or insufficient. 2, unlike sanctuary cities, it does not appear the city of Whitewater sought the immigrants. Instead, the city's theory explaining the sudden influx revolves around a complex web of ample student housing following COVID, a need for farm and manufacturing labor, and the congregation of sponsor families in and around the city that were then identified by migrants at the border. 3, despite the presence of notorious MS-13 gang members from Nicaragua and investigations that have led to the seizure of significant cartel funds, confusion remains as to the processing and potential deportation of violent criminals. Emails reflected uncertainty regarding the process for contacting ICE as migrants await immigration hearings in Chicago. This is particularly troubling considering the identification of known international crime syndicate members within the city. In December 2023, the police chief thanked ICE for, quote, the recent assistance in our city removing an individual who had been identified as a wanted MS-13 gang member from Nicaragua. A member of this committee, in a January letter to the police chief, made reference to the infiltration of Mexico's Gulf cartel in Whitewater. And while unrelated to the situation in Whitewater, and already mentioned by Congressman Van Orton, it was recently reported that a woman was sexually assaulted in Prairie du Chien by a suspected member of Tren de Aragua, the violent criminal organization born a decade ago in Venezuelan prisons. Simply put, while the exact scope and extent of these criminal operations in Wisconsin is not clear, their very existence in the state should motivate every policymaker to secure the nation's borders. 4, at various points, city leadership sought assistance from the state, including the governor's office. While meetings took place, there was an emphasis on the private nature of the meeting and a request to keep the meeting, quote, low profile to avoid the press. 5, city officials were made aware of deplorable living conditions, including children sleeping in sheds during sub-zero temperatures, children left at home unattended while parents worked, a 14-year-old being forced to work 30 hours per week by her father, and small apartment units where children were forced to cohabitate with 8 to 10 adults. The pairing of non-family members has resulted in allegations of sexual assault involving young females and other acts against victims, including the discovery of a deceased child discarded in a ditch in a bag. At the time of the IRG report, there were 10 open sexual offense cases involving migrants in the city. 6, as a result of increased costs to the city's police department and school district, both taxing entities are considering property tax referendums possibly as soon as spring of 2025. 7, because of the focus on the unique law enforcement challenges associated with the migrant population, such as violations for driving without a license, the police department has identified a significant decrease in proactive policing. And finally, in light of questions related to the legal status of migrants, questions have been raised regarding how individuals should be identified. In particular, the city appears unsure how migrants can obtain identification cards. Some members of the community have suggested paths for migrants to obtain driver's licenses. Despite this lack of clarity, at least one record suggests certain migrants have been able to obtain temporary driver's licenses from the Wisconsin DMV. In conclusion, while numerous public officials have attempted to highlight the challenges, the nation's broken immigration system continues to place an unmanageable burden on local units of government. Overall, many of the communications, particularly those from the police chief, make clear the city has attempted to balance maintaining an objective posture on a highly charged public policy debate while recognizing the clear impact the influx of immigrants is having on the city's ability to protect its residents, ensure a quality public education for the city's school children, and maintain fiscal solvency. Unless and until the federal government secures the border and repairs the nation's utterly broken immigration infrastructure, local units of government, like those in Whitewater, Wisconsin, will be left to respond to the federal government's continued failures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis.